Fergus O'Dowd is with us to talk to us a little bit more about what's going to happen this week. Fergus, you invited, I think, everybody essentially to the committee on Wednesday morning. Can you just talk us through the process of what happens next and what you hope will happen when everybody does finally come before the committee this week?
Sure. Yeah, we got a message from Padraig O'Cady, Senator Padraig O'Cady. He asked for an emergency meeting on Friday, and I consulted with my colleagues over the weekend, and we agreed last night that we called a meeting on Wednesday afternoon. Now, we already will have the women's hockey team in, and we're celebrating their success. So it'll be after that happens. So it'll be sometime in the afternoon of Wednesday. We've invited in the Sports Ireland. The invitation is going out this morning to Minister Ross, and obviously the FAI. And I do note that yesterday evening they did in fact say that they wanted to come before the committee, and clearly, we would certainly have a lot of questions for them. So that's really. So I think what I want to do anyway, is to look to the future and to see how things must change, but how they can change urgently, particularly in the appointment of the independent directors. Because I think whatever else happens, it's the new face, the new leadership that is moving in from the outside into the FAI, I think is what the people want. Now, I don't know who these independent directors are going to be. There was a national competition, or they circulated the advertisements nationally, and hopefully there will be absolutely clear leaders out there who will have the support of everybody to move soccer forward. So I think that's the most important thing, in my view, to get those independent directors. And what is the delay? Now, they may have issues, and I can understand that, around the financial situation, which is absolutely appalling. And I suppose if you were moving in as a director from the outside into a company with the balance sheet as was presented, with a deficit of greater than 55 million, obviously you would be thinking twice about it. So we need to talk about that issue and what guarantees can and must be given to ensure that the organisation, if it's still there, can move forward. But I think the new leadership, if you look at what happened with the Olympic Council when Mr. Hickey went, it transformed itself basically by Sarah Keane. I'm not suggesting that that's what will happen here, but I think we need something like that to happen.
Yeah, look, Fergus, that's a really good point, because actually that question was posed at the press conference the other day about whether or not they were even thinking about a rebrand, and it's not on their agenda at the moment. But certainly, if the question gets asked by your committee, things can suddenly become part of the common discourse. We could all start going, that's not a bad idea. Niall Quinn called for it on this show on Friday, and actually
right.
it makes perfect sense that the FAI, this could be the end of the FAI, and that might be no bad thing. It will be an opportunity for them to reconstitute their own constitution, to change some of the structures that allowed what happened over the last decade and a half, and maybe even before that, to transpire, where the power became so concentrated, the board became so old, so calcified, that a new organisation might have structures that don't allow the same power to emerge the way it had in the past.
Yeah, well, there are some changes proposed already, that whoever the new permanent CEO will be, that he or she is not a member of the board, and they are accountable to the board. And I think what happened with the old board was that it was captured by their chief executive, and a total and absolute influence over everything and everybody, it appears, and nobody asked a question. So I mean, that's unbelievable. It's just absolutely unbelievable. So I mean, there has to be structural change, but I think a new face, new leadership,
a new organisation.
Then is obviously the Minister Ross and his efforts in relation to women's soccer, and his commitment now to get that 2 million to the youth support services, and I think it's about 60 full-time people who work right around the country with young people. So I think that's very welcome as well. So there's good things happening, but obviously there's a lot of other things that have to happen as well. And I'm quite sure our committee will have very serious and probing questions for Mr. Conway and his board when they do come in. And I mean, I remember the last question I asked him: would they do a forensic audit? And 3 times he didn't answer that question. Now it's done. And obviously, we don't know the outcome of the COSI audit itself. We haven't heard their internal Mazars audit. What's happening with that? Will they bring that to us on Wednesday? Well, I hope they do, but obviously, clearly, if there's anything legal or anything for the Gardaí, we can't discuss that. But, what will they put in the public domain now in terms of what they additionally know, even as a result of their own inquiries? I think that would be.
Yeah, hugely important, obviously, that we do begin to get some more transparency from the organisation and a commitment to it into the future. Just in terms of the actual other parties involved in all of this, do you believe that Sport Ireland have questions to answer about their relationship? Or do you believe that the Minister has questions to answer with his relationship? He's on the record as saying that he thought John Delaney was doing a fine job.
Well, I suppose he was looking at the auditor report of last year, and we saw that it looked like a fine job, but I think it was a positive balance turned into a huge loss. People have to take the auditor accounts at face value, and there are questions about the auditors as well. Now I am very much aware that the auditors have not given their commitment to support this particular. That they haven't signed off on this all because there may be issues that they don't know about. But I think that Sports Ireland, from what I understand, the Cozy Audit did show that the Sports Ireland funding was fully and appropriately spent. But going beyond, by going beyond the money that the government actually gave them, and by going into the Cozy forensic audit, that showed up serious and other structural issues within that organisation that would probably never have come to light were it not done. So I think that the question is, yes, Sport Ireland need to have greater powers if they don't already use them, and they didn't use them if they have them in relation to the FAI up to now, to go in and look behind the auditing of the money that they give, but to say that the sports organisation is competent and can in fact handle in the appropriate way public funding, and they have checks and balances in their accounting and in their administrative system, which are probing and which will identify and pursue issues like have arisen in the FAI. And I think that's what has been missing. That has certainly been missing.
Yeah, certainly the whole issue of compliance is one that is going to be a massive one for the FAI. And look, I think all the other sports organisations who receive funding probably need to have a look at their own compliance right across the board. This issue comes up in other sports all the time. Just to go back to that question about whether or not you think the FAI could rebrand, is that something you would personally be in favour of?
Well, when I looked at those men, and they were all men, I'd say, hey guys, you're going to have to change. You're going to have a gender balance. You're going to have new directors. Personally, I want all new faces. Now, I know that a number of those people, and most of them, bar two, were never on the board before, and I know that they couldn't have known what was going on. But the people who could have known and didn't, I think they have to go immediately. I don't think there's any case for them to be there any longer. To get confidence and listening and watching the parents and the young people over the weekend on the TV right around the country commenting on this issue, they want total change as well. So, I'm not a corporate person. Sorry, I'm not a corporate. I don't have any qualifications in corporate knowledge or anything like that. But to me, I would love to see a new organisation if it can be done. But the problem is the debts are there. And if the organisation goes into liquidation, what happens to them? What happens to all the assets? So there are huge questions that I can't answer, but I think we'll have to ask. But it certainly needs absolutely new, clearly defined change, new leadership, absolutely, utterly, totally. And I think that's why we need those independent directors. And if they know who they are, if those directors need reassurances, I'm sure Sport Ireland and, the government should be prepared to help them, to take over that organisation now.
Yeah, you mentioned things like gender balance there as one of the areas that could be looked at under a new organisation. Is there anything else, any other specific areas that you'd have at the top of your list in terms of better governance by way of improvement?
Well, I think that a number of people around the country were talking about, that they'd like to participate in decision making. And is there a way that every single person that's registered with the FAI as a parent, if I'm a parent, that I'm automatically, that they might have some say in the leadership of that organisation, and to open it up and to make sure that there's maximum participation democratically of all members and of all parents, everybody. They're all part of the soccer family, and they should all have a say in the soccer future and in its management, that there should be a significant role for them. Now, I don't know how you do that, but I do think that is an important and good principle. So I would like to see that. I know there may be at the moment that you join a club and you vote through your club and so on. But I think the broader involvement, the better, I think.
Yeah, I think everybody would agree with that. Fergus, good stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you.
Fergus
Bye-bye.
ODowd, they're giving us some thoughts ahead of the joint Oireachtas Committee meeting this week, which they've invited everybody to, and hopefully everybody will show up.